one of the things too is, well, all right, supporting the troops, all right, maybe that's not happening, but we need to stay there for the sake of the Iraqi people. I saw in the news just yesterday, I think, that McCain's son came back from the Marines. He was in Iraq. He came back, and John McCain said, oh, when he went over there 7 months ago, Iraq was a horrifying mess. There were IEDs going off all over the place. But now, 7 months later, it's so safe that we're giving out soccer balls. I thought, well, that's just, well, because Lord knows, if my country was in a war-torn state, what I would most want is a soccer ball. And the soccer ball thing, that's not just new magically Iraq became safe and we gave out soccer balls. We've been giving out soccer balls. In 2004, the war was almost over, and we knew this because we gave out soccer balls. In 2006, we knew it was almost over because we were able to give someone a soccer ball. One of the guys that I worked with from the Iraq Veterans Against the War down in New Orleans, he was in one of the groups of people that gave out soccer balls. They had a 5-ton truck filled with soccer balls, and it was his job one day to give them all out. A 5-ton truck filled with soccer balls, and none of them were inflated. So his group, they tried to get somebody that would inflate the soccer balls. They tried to get their colonel, the battalion commander, I guess, to put in a requisition to get a little pump that could inflate the soccer balls. And the commander said, no, we're not going to do that. That's stupid. There's a war going on. We're not going to inflate, 5 tons worth of soccer balls. But go give them out. So that was his mission, to go through this war-torn area of the Sunni Triangle, giving out flattened soccer balls to children. And that's what they did. They gave them all away. And then on the way back, they saw, people were wearing them as hats. They were thrown in the trees. They were floating in the canals. Everywhere they looked, soccer balls. That is not supporting the Iraqi people. Furthermore, and this is really a pet peeve of mine, when we hear about how we're giving things away to the children, we need to think about that process and not think, oh, there's a Kodak moment, we made some child happy. What we're doing when we do that is we're luring the children to where the US troops are, which is the least safe place for them to be, is children. And there's been times, this is not just, in my head, there's actually been stuff reported in the Washington Post about captains in the US military directing their troops when they're in a dangerous area to give toys to the children because the children will surround their tanks and they won't get fired on if there's children surrounding them. Now normally we have a phrase for that when we use civilians to protect our own troops. We call them human shields, and it's a war crime. So we need to think about that every time we hear one of those stories. Are they giving away toys to the kids because it's for the kids' benefit, or are we doing it for our benefit? It's not supporting the Iraqis. The other thing, I know you touched a little bit before, I lost where you are, but about the refugee situation. There are 500,000 Iraqi refugees in Jordan. Up until like 2006, 2007, every month there were 60,000 new refugees. Now we're up to 100,000 refugees every month. That's the rate. From the beginning of the war until the middle of last summer, the number of those refugees that we took in, Jordan 500,000, other surrounding countries in the hundreds of thousands, the US took in 463. We cannot pretend that this war is going on because we care about the Iraqi people. That's a lie, and we need to reject that statement. I know one of my friends has been kind of on my case because she said, I need to be more upbeat and optimistic and give people a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling about themselves. And I said, well, no, I think I just need to tell the truth. There are a bunch of Iraqi veterans that will be doing some truth-telling next month, March 13th through 16th. It's the Winter Soldier thing, just like we had the Winter Soldier investigations in Detroit in 1971. We have another Winter Soldier investigation coming up again, and this will be in Washington, D.C. And they will be talking about what happened, and the reason they need to talk about what happened is because it's not just the story of this war, but it's the story of all wars. And that it's not just a few bad apples here or there. It's not a couple of people in Abu Ghraib. It's not a couple of Marines in Haditha. It's not a couple of bad apples. This is a system. So when we hear about things like the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, That was not one massacre. The next day, there was another company that went down the length of the peninsula and did the same exact thing to other villages, but we don't hear about that in the media. One of the people in that company, the company that was doing the same thing as they did in My Lai, that he was doing it the next day, he said, well, it was really a lot of fun. It was kind of like being in a shooting gallery. We need people to hear these stories one after another, so that they are flooded with them, so they don't see them as isolated incidents, so they recognize that it is part of the system. And like I said, that'll be next month. And the one thing I would ask of you all is just if you could send C-SPAN an email and ask them to cover those investigations. I know the IVAW would greatly appreciate it.